Welcome to the Tech Panel.
1, 2, 3, 4.
The podcast where tech minds meet.
All right. Paul, welcome onto the show. CEO of Productly. How's your day going?
It's going great, thank you.
Yeah.
Early start, as I said, with some clients in the US, but yeah, it's lovely to be able to do it from here on the Sunshine Coast, not in a big rainy city.
Tell you, it definitely could be worse.
Yeah.
Small piece of paradise over here on the sunny coast. So a couple questions for you.
Sure.
Can you tell us a bit about the business, what your role is, and what your solution offers?
Yeah, sure. So we're a services company. We build custom software for businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So everything from kind of digital products to, deliver directly to customers like marketplaces, software as a solution products, and also kind of boring old software to make businesses work better. So internal software to operate businesses, to make things more efficient. Businesses start out as small businesses, and when they get to 10 or 20 people, they generally start to kind of buckle under their own weight, and email and Excel can only get you so far. And then it's often time to start automating and building some software. And that's where we come in.
I always think that to myself, it's got to be really nice being the people that can actually create software.
Yeah.
Because when you run into your own personal problems, do you ever think to yourself, we'll build a solution, don't worry, guys?
Well, that's pretty much how I started. From my very first job, I was that guy in the office who had studied computer science, but more importantly, understood how the business ran and could build something. In those days, it was Microsoft Access or SQL Server, or something to make the business work better. And that's always been my outlook on kind of how do you make people's jobs easier? How do you make the business run smoother? How do you have less mistakes, less frustration? And, fast forward 20 plus years, the technology set that we have today with no code and low code software is, it just makes that fun to do and quick to do. And more importantly, affordable for a group of companies, that previously couldn't afford to build custom solutions. They would be stuck with off-the-shelf software that maybe doesn't work, or have built something very complex that has kind of become a monster.
You took me on a bit of an emotional roller coaster there. I was like, oh no, Microsoft Access. Do I have some stories about utilizing that system?
Yeah.
The dog of a system to learn if you've never learned coding or anything.
Yeah.
Welcome to the jungle.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like, I joke about it, but it's the OG of no code.
That's it.
Like that was where it all started, was, you could actually take this package and you could create some data structures and some forms and do some stuff. And it was, it's kind of a joke when you think back about it now. Here's a funny story for you. So I have a customer in property management. So they provide property management software for resorts and hotels, actually here on the sunny coast and the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
And we are replacing a Microsoft Access-based solution that has been in use for 25 years by these poor property managers, managing bookings, managing payments, managing reconciliation of expenses. And so we're fast forwarding that, 2 decades and hopefully giving them something that works a little better.
I hope you guys are celebrating when you put that dog down.
I actually think I saw a tear in the eye of the first customer. It was like, oh, thank God. Thank God. You've got me off this monster.
Yeah, for anyone who's listening who has never heard or used Microsoft Access, it's that unused Microsoft tool. If you have the full suite, that's
the red one with a P.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And you jump into it and you think, how am I going to use this? And then you quickly find you don't ever want to use it. But some businesses actually love it. There's quite a bit of value you can leverage from some of these tools. And it's funny, I've never heard the term no code used to describe Microsoft Access. Maybe can you explain to people what you mean by no code?
Yeah, so no code and low code, which are kind of used interoperably a little bit. It's basically the ability to develop visually is the simplest way of explaining it. So the ability to kind of say, well, I want something that stores my customer data, and that there's a name and an address and a business number, and then to create some visual interfaces of, we need to be able to capture a form and to be able to send it to someone and have them approve it. And so it's visual development is what no code is. So it's the inevitable kind of evolution of software over 30, 40 years from, 50 years ago, punch cards, 40 years ago, COBOL and, the green screens and the matrix looking type stuff, into object-oriented programming, into Visual Basic was a big step. And now we're in a world where, you can literally, if you know what you're doing, and you have to understand, that's the key part, is you have to have kind of the brain of an architect of what am I trying to build and how's it going to work. But if you can do that, I can train almost anyone to build software, providing they have a clear idea of what they're trying to do.
True. I feel a little bit bad now saying such negative things about Microsoft Access. I'm sure some tech person listening right now is going to be thinking, I can't believe you said that.
Well, Microsoft Access is responsible for my whole career. So, so I love Microsoft Access.
You could tell, like, personally, I was like that person who was like, our business, like, we're going to use Microsoft Access. And I was a very, very junior network administrator at the time. And they're like, here's the tool that we were going to utilize. And I was like, what? Just build a tool for us. And I was like, okay.
Well, it was a Band-Aid, I mean, can I tell a story?
Oh, go for it.
So in one of my first jobs, I was IT executive for a mobile cellular service provider. So for like a Telstra, for maybe a Belong is a better example. And we had bought a billing system, a COBOL-based billing system from a Scottish company that didn't work and was not billing some things, and we didn't know which things. So it was losing like $60 million a month. And the only way I could think of fixing it was to take Microsoft Access, put all those billing data into Access, and to reproduce a bill and figure out what was missing. So Microsoft Access saved that business $60 million a month. So let's give Microsoft Access.
I know. I have like the traumatic, I have never used this tool. And now I'm asked to be the guy who's going to be managing experience. But if you're right, if you are someone who has I don't even think you need to have a fully mature idea of how to build tools.
No, not at all.
It's very, if you can sort of imagine, if you're listening to this, I would say it's Excel as a backend or an SQL database where you put in data.
That's good.
And then, like you said, you're creating forms. So you create a digital form, and whatever you type into that form populates data into that backend repository, and then you can report against that.
Exactly, yeah. That's 100% right.
Yeah.
And the same is true today with the no-code tools like Bubble is a big one. If anyone out there that has an idea for a startup and can't afford to hire a developer and wants to build their own solution, something like Bubble is your friend. But the same thing is true. You have to have, kind of a brain that works in a process-orientated, data-orientated way to be able to pick up a tool like that and build something useful. And some people love that and some people hate that. So, it is much easier to develop software these days than, 20, 30 years ago, but it still takes a person that actually has a solution-oriented mindset and wants to suffer a bit, because you're going to beat your head against the wall. And if you're persistent and if you've got a clear idea of what you're doing, you probably can build something, but you may be better off asking a professional to do it.
Absolutely. I would be asking for a professional. But yeah, Paul, what inspired you to use the no-code tools?
Well, I've been involved in software development since the beginning of my career.
Yeah.
And I've run large development teams and R&D teams. I've run large agencies, and 10 years ago, let's say, if you wanted to build something meaningful for a business, I'd probably have to assemble a team of a network or system administrator, a database person, a back-end person, a front-end person, a designer, and so that team starts to add weight and starts to add cost.
Yeah.
Which is fine if you've got a well-funded startup, or if you're a mature business and you've got a budget and you're good to go. But if actually what happened is I'd done all of that and I kind of thought I was done with tech.
Yeah.
And then a friend of mine in the recruitment space wanted to build a marketplace where she could take the thousands of C-suite executives that she knew and put their services on a marketplace where you could search by industry, by country, by skill set, and find someone, typically a previous CEO in that industry, in that country, whose skills you needed and whose advice you needed. You could buy an hour of their time. And she came to me and said, like, how do I do that? And I was like, well, we can write a specification. You can go out to market. You can find an agency, but it's going to cost you a couple $100,000 to do that. She was like, I don't have that 100. So, well, let's look for an off-the-shelf solution.
Mm-hmm.
And there weren't any. And then it was like, let's look for one of these kind of light builder, no-code, low-code type tools. And I was pretty skeptical. And then I found Bubble,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, oh, that's really cool. This is like Microsoft Access on steroids. And in 4 weeks, I built her a solution. We raised $200,000 for it, and off we went.
Oh, wow.
So like it can be done.
This is literally every single story I've ever heard of using Bubble or Microsoft Access. We need a solution. Okay, let's build it. How much is it going to cost? $100,000. What else do we have?
What else could we do? Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. In walks in Bubble and Microsoft Access.
And from there, I was like, that piqued my interest. And then I sort of started a business around that and started reaching out to people I knew, and just through word of mouth got customers. And slowly those customers got bigger and bigger and bigger and more complex. We started bringing in other tools, AI tools, integration tools, back-end no-code tools. And, now we're in a position where I think where that technology is ready, not just for, I've got an idea, let's whack it out over the weekend, but for at least medium and maybe even large size businesses who, could build things that actually work much faster, much cheaper than they're currently experiencing with traditional technology and developers, and even worse with the SAPs and Oracles and Microsofts of the world.
That's it. I think the beauty of using those tools as well is that it provides you with a level of flexibility that off or marketed tools that you can buy cannot offer.
Correct.
Right? You can make this thing literally the most bespoke and unique product that will perfectly align with what it is that you're trying to solve for, which I think is like the big driver for a lot of people towards these products. They don't want to go to someone that says, we offer this tool, but it works in all these other industries, so it's not perfectly adapted for your business process.
100% right. And so that fitting the solution to how the business actually works, as opposed to fitting how the business to how the solution works. That's like our mantra. Is like, we build software that works how you work, not the other way around. So
the other big added benefit here as well, especially I got to juice people up on how good these tools can be, is that once you learn how to use the basic functionality and you're like, okay, it's solved the problem that we have, problems never just go away. You're going to run into more and more. And that tool can continually be adapted to whatever else comes around the corner, right? Once you've learned how to use it, you could just continually build and adapt it to new and evolving solutions.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I have a customer in Brisbane in the scaffolding industry. And, we started out building just a little scheduler, replacing an Excel spreadsheet, saying, well, I need to take this scaffolding kit to that site on that truck and have that team assemble it. That sounds pretty simple. So we built that, and it's really cool, and you can drag and drop, and you can organize everything, and you can communicate with clients and contractors and get confirmations. And then it was like, okay, so what stock are we taking to them? Oh, so now we need stock management.
Yep.
Then it was like, okay, well, where are we putting that stock in the yard? Oh, okay, now we need yard management. Right? And so it grows and it grows and it grows. But it's really satisfying for me, because I visited them yesterday, and you see how the weight has been lifted off that business by having something that actually works. And they're no longer sitting with SMS and email and Excel and overwriting the file and getting the wrong version and sending stuff to the wrong site. And it's helpful. That's rewarding to me.
And they're pretty mature products as well. Like if you have a question, you can quickly go into any of the, that's something I found that really helped me in my business is we're like, how do we build this? And it's like, how do I imagine creating this from the ground up versus we could do it is you can go to the forums and say, this is what I want to build. And someone's like, bang, here's the code. We did this exactly for our business already. Plug and play that with your solution. And it become quite useful and easy.
You're right. It used to be that you'd have to go to like Stack Overflow and go and dig into the tech forums and the barrier of entry was pretty high there. But what these tools have done well, I think, is because they're talking to people that are not necessarily technology professionals, but are keen to learn. The community support and the education on YouTube and the likes is just excellent.
Mm.
I think the real key is understanding what the business is trying to do and what that product must do, and then kind of creating an architecture where, you're not just using Bubble. You're using Bubble for one thing. You're using Amazon Comprehend for an AI piece. You're using Stripe for a payment piece, and how to kind of orchestrate that solution, I think, is where the skill comes in. Otherwise, you can kind of tie yourself in knots, and you becomes just like a self-referencing piece of spaghetti that is cool for a year, but after 2 years and 3 years and 4 years, it becomes unmanageable itself.
Where were you when I was trying to build an equipment management solution?
That's probably
move on.
it's probably a good segue, Paul, because I know working from the out of the box technology perspective, we used to always hear like the horror stories of custom solutions going wrong.
Mm.
I think everyone understands like the value of a custom solution.
Yeah, sure.
But I guess from your perspective, what are some of the biggest pitfalls companies fall into when they're trying to build these bespoke custom solutions for their businesses?
Yeah. Well, I mean, these are the same pitfalls, or many of them that have always existed. And the first one is, being really clear about what it is you're trying to build.
Yeah.
What is the process you're trying to support? What are the inputs, outputs? Who are the people involved? And getting, going through it in old time speak would have been called business analysis, is what it would have been called, and actually going through and getting everyone's input and making sure that whatever process you're trying to implement is actually the correct process. Because the flip side, kind of the other side of the sword, the double edge, is that once you've put something in software, you can't cheat. Right. So now that's how you have to do it. So when when maybe there was like a manual workaround and you just call Bob and say, hey, like,
Yeah.
I sent it to the wrong site, won't you go fetch it?
Yeah.
Now you can't do that. So I think that's the first thing is getting really clear about what you're trying to do. And then there's a risk management piece, particularly for medium-sized businesses, around who are the people supporting that code, and will they be around in a year's time and in 2 years' time? So it's tempting to say, well, let's just get a freelancer in and I'm sure they can build something and knock it out. But what happens when, he or she decides to go to Bali for a year and disappears off the map? So I think, partnering with someone that you can trust to do that and is going to be around is really important. Or if you're big enough, building an internal team where you have redundancy and you have that's plain old business sense, like you have to manage those risks. But what I find is that the businesses that I talk to, small and medium sized businesses, there isn't a CIO, there isn't a CTO. There's a CEO, and then there's some operational folks and some sales folks, and maybe there's one or two tech type people in the midst, but there isn't actually a team that can stand behind a solution. And that's, I guess, I'm doing a sales job now. That's where we come in. It's when you've got a team of 10 people, long history in the industry, who are not going anywhere, that can stand behind that solution and support the evolution of that and the refactoring of that. Because the reality with any technology is the underlying technology moves on, and you build up what's called a technology debt. So and that debt has to be paid. Like you don't get to build something and then leave it for 3 years and hope that you never have to touch it again. It's unfortunately that's not how tech works, unfortunately.
That's literally how every customer approaches every solution, though, unfortunately, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's our job, is to is to engage responsibly and maturely and make sure people understand what they're getting into. That no, you're not going to build it and then never touch it again. You're going to build it and it's going to need to be improved. It's going to need to be maintained, debugged, and ultimately refactored. And I think, providing you set those expectations up front, you're okay. Where you get in trouble is where someone says, "Oh, for $5,000 I can build you this thing and it'll work forever," and
Yeah.
and then it doesn't work, and they end up ditching and running.
Paul, just quickly, so you mentioned that so each software that you build for each customer is obviously going to have its own bugs, its own.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that internally?
Well, carefully, just proper testing, proper unit testing, and then a period of alpha launching, of beta launching. You don't just flip the switch on the software, because there's people's lives sometimes literally at stake, but also figuratively at stake, where people are doing their jobs, and when you take away the Excel spreadsheet, let's say, and put in a piece of software, if that doesn't work, they literally can't do their jobs. So, we've got a very mature and careful process of running side by side with whatever they've got today, and then taking on a little piece and testing that, and taking on a bigger piece. And it's software development. That part hasn't changed. In fact, the upfront part of designing it and specifying what you want, and the piece of launching it and the piece of supporting it, those things haven't changed. The middle bit of actually building it has got easier and quicker, but not the rest.
Yeah.
Do you believe, from a business model perspective, most of the opportunities that you're working on are more land and expand, where they have a very simple idea of a type of problem that they want to fix because they probably think it's way too big to bite off the broader business problem they're trying to solve for? And like you said, you obviously need to make sure these things are working very well before they're released, so it actually opens the opportunity.
That's right,
So once it's a proof of concept, you can actually go back in and say, how do you feel about this solution? Are you ready to move on to the next stage?
That is how it seems to have worked out in most cases. In most cases, we haven't arrived and said, let's take your entire business, nuts and bolts, and reimagine and re-architect and build a solution that covers everything. In general, there's been some pieces that work, and oftentimes those are the simple things, like a CRM system, accounting system. There's no reason to rebuild that functionality. It works. But there's often key pieces that are missing that can add a lot of value, that are not that hard to do. And if you get that right, I like that. I like your description, land and expand, because that's you can land, you can fix that part, you can build trust, you can build a process that works, and then you can expand into stuff that's more interesting, or maybe that's adding more revenue, or actually opening up new opportunities, not just fixing operational gaps.
Interesting, Paul. And I imagine a lot of your role will be talking to prospective businesses that have a problem, and then you're consulting with them whether or not they should go down a custom solution. Maybe they should go through an out-of-the-box offering. Maybe they go down another path. I guess, is there any recommendations you have for businesses when they're trying to determine how should we solve this problem?
Yeah, there are many cases, in fact, that I say to people, I don't think you should build your own solution. Like there's a solution over there that is good enough, right? So, and in that case, that's fine. Sometimes it's not the right fit. It's difficult for businesses, because if you go to someone that develops software for a living and ask if you should develop software, the answer probably from most people is yes. From me sometimes it's no. So I guess getting good advice, maybe is the answer to your question, Matt. Is like, make sure you get good advice about what you should buy, what you should build, what you should integrate.
I think a lot of people take for granted the power of no, especially in a position that you're in. Nothing, I think, builds trust more from a customer's perspective than when you say, no, I can't do that, or no, you shouldn't do that. Right? Because I think a lot of anxiety from a consumer's perspective is on, this guy just wants to make money off of me. You know what I mean? They just want business. They just want business. And being able to say up front, no, or there's a more competitive solution that's on the market that is better than what I offer, something along those lines. The second later on down the line where they're thinking to themselves, all right, I think we do actually have a good case for getting something built, and they come back to you, and they're obviously going to trust you significantly more.
I mean, actually, I won't name the name of the company, a very large construction industry group, and they had spent a lot of time, like 8 years and multiple $1 million, building their own ERP system to run the business.
Yeah.
And I met the chairman of that group, and he was asking, could you replace this for me? could you come in and build an ERP system? And my answer to him was like, maybe I could, but I'm not interested in taking on that risk, and neither should you. And there's no reason to do it. Like you should be creating an architecture with an ERP system at the core, and and spending a lot of time understanding your business processes, so that when you do build or buy, you actually know what you're building or buying for. You're not just guessing and spending money for no reason. So sometimes the answer is no. Yeah, sometimes the right answer is no.
Yeah.
How do you validate whether or not the opportunity is right for something, for a no-code solution? Like from a customer's perspective, obviously they're not going to really know the difference between a custom solution or a no-code solution. How do you help them understand when and where to leverage that particular technology?
The answer to that is, 70% of business applications being built today are being built with no-code and low-code solutions. So the question is rapidly becoming, why would you spend more doing it the, let's say, traditional way when you could do it faster and cheaper? And there are some times when you might do that. And for example, a large stock exchange asked us to build a marketplace for unlisted shares. That's not a good fit for a no-code software for a couple of reasons. One is performance, the other is security, and the third is auditability. So that wasn't a good fit. So if you're building a financial switch or a stock exchange, or something that has to process thousands of transactions a second, you might want to consider that, and that'll probably change over the next 5 to 10 years. But if you're building a business solution that is handling maybe hundreds, thousands, even tens of thousands of transactions a day, taking orders, doing processes, approving things, automating payments, integrating to delivery systems, kind of real world stuff, real brick and mortar type world stuff, then my question would be, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Why would you go and do this the hard way? The hard, slow, expensive way when you don't need to.
Yeah, I guess off the back of that, what has been your most interesting solution that you've built?
Good question. I want to know this. Yeah, that's a good one.
At the moment, we've got a client in the United States that is in the medical record retrieval industry. So this is where medical records are needed, oftentimes for legal cases. So, and there are hundreds of thousands of medical record providers in the US, hospital groups, doctors, pathology labs, etc. And until recently, like how they used to do it was the law firm would ask for a record. They'd send out probably a fax or send someone on a motorbike to go and request that record from the reception of the hospital. And what we've replaced that with is an API-driven solution where we can connect to the hospital group's software and retrieve those medical records programmatically and instantly, and then use Amazon Comprehend, which it takes text and turns that text into a structured medical record that you can then query with a ChatGPT-like interface to say, what was this patient's problem? Were they given the right medication? So we've fast forwarded that business like 30 years.
Wow.
So it maybe doesn't sound that exciting to you guys, but to me as a technologist, delivering technology that solves a business problem, like that's super cool. Like it's taken them from the literally a guy on a motorbike going to the reception, to click a button, and not only do you get the data, but then you get that data structured into something that actually means something, and you can ask questions about, and you can see, are there other people that have taken this medication and had the same results? And so now we're taking that data and exposing it back to customers for research purposes, and it's super cool.
That's crazy. That must be such an amazing feeling for yourself and your team.
Very rewarding.
It's very rewarding. Yeah. That's why I do what I do.
Yeah.
It's really rewarding to build something that that helps that business expand massively.
Yeah.
And it's not about removing jobs, and it's about putting technology in place that can allow that business to scale. and
I guess
find different revenue opportunities through that data and through that ability.
interesting.
Just a bit of
And I
a
guess
random. Oh, sorry. You go, Matt.
Oh no, it's almost just the inverse of your question there. But I'm
Yeah.
just interested now, Paul, from your perspective. I know custom is unique in nature, but are you seeing like a trend or themes that businesses come to you in terms of a problem they're trying to solve? Is there some sort of
Mm.
commonality between everyone, or is it all very unique?
It's really unique, It's
Mm.
so unique to the industry, to the size of the company, to the technology that's in play. I think what if you were to ask what's the common thing, the common thing is that there are many more options today. If you were to go back 10 years or maybe 20 years and you're a medium-sized business trying to do something and you wanted to automate some processes, you'd be on the phone to Oracle and SAP and JD Edwards and those guys, and you probably couldn't afford them unless you were a large business, or you'd just be kind of living with a bit of a mess. And I think that's what's changed, both in the off-the-shelf software. There's a lot of really good solutions in very narrow niches, which is great. And some of those solutions have been, those businesses providing those narrow niche solutions have also come into play because the cost of software development has gone down, right? So a lot of those people are also using no-code and low-code software to build their SaaS plays and the likes. So I think it's a great time to be in technology because there's so much more choice. Those choices are so much more affordable, but with that that kind of blessing of choice comes complexity and comes a kind of a weight of making the right choice, because there are many choices you could make.
As the saying goes, when building software, plan slow, build quick.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I might borrow that. That's really good.
So I'm trying to imagine here. Obviously, this has come miles from the time my experience in using Microsoft Access, right? I never would have imagined in my wildest dreams people could connect, any other external ecosystems into your internal database. Yeah. And I think the big advantages here you're kind of describing is that most people historically wanted to build one of these tools, like you said, if you want to go the low and slow way, is that there's not really anything you could do within your own power to build one of these tools, right? And it scares a lot of people away. With these no-code, low-code solutions that are existing on the market today, it really just seems to boil down to, do you have a problem? Yeah. And if you have a problem, can you describe it clearly? Yes. And if you can describe it clearly, you should be able to at least define what the solution would look like. And I think if you get all those three things down, you should have a pretty decent case for using one of these solutions that are on the market. And it makes it a lot easier for people to make the leap of jumping into something, building their own tool. And like you said, you didn't have that background, it sounded like, to begin with. You had a computer science background, and then you're like, there's a need.
Yeah, I was technology savvy enough and motivated enough and enough of a problem solver to pick up the tools at whatever level they were. And now that's even easier. And I think one thing we haven't touched on that is incredibly important is integration. So you've got tools like Zapier and Make and the likes that make it possible to join almost anything to anything. Mm-hmm. So where maybe previously you would have got to a situation where let's say you've got a CRM system. When you take a customer on, you create a contact, and now
sorry, can you describe what a CRM is really quickly for
customer relationship management? So it's typically around managing customer contact, around the interactions of those customers, the marketing to those customers, and the support of those customers. Mm-hmm. So there's some great solutions that are really cheap in that space. So HubSpot is a famous one, that you can get for free for many cases, and you can do some pretty cool stuff with that. But now if you've got this custom developed software that, let's say, is doing estimations and quotations and for a customer. How do you integrate those two things so that when you look in the CRM system, you can see the quotes or vice versa? And that used to be the step-off point where people said, okay, well, we can't integrate those two things. Let's rebuild all of that customer management capability around who the customer is, who's spoken to them, what's been sent to them. And that put a lot of weight into the software development, whereas what we typically do now is to say, well, let's build the piece that has magic, that's unique for you. And let's just create that contact through Make or through Zapier into the CRM. And when something happens, let's add a field saying value of orders and update that field of value so that you have kind of an integrated single view of the customer, but you haven't had to build all of it. You've only built the piece that makes a difference for you.
When would you think one of these solutions it's a good time to start looking into this type of product in a business? Is this like a startup type solution? Is this like a midway through the journey?
Both. Yeah, so we have two types of customers. The one is, I'm a startup and I have some money. I can't afford to hire 5 or 6 developers and spend a year developing this thing. I need to get something to market quickly, sometimes called minimal viable product, MVP. And no code is a great solution for building something that is representative of what I think the market needs, and now I can go and test that market with something that is functional and find out if my idea is good or bad, right? So that's the one kind of group of customers. The other group of customers is more established businesses, whether they're small or large, but typically small or medium, really. But typically it's once they start to scale beyond 10 or 20 people, all of a sudden the way they were doing things starts to kind of get a bit shaky, and they need software to make that more efficient and to make it more consistent and to ensure the quality is there. And those businesses, if there's something unique in the way they operate, in the way they actually go from delivering, in the way they go from sale to delivery of services or product, there's something unique for both those groups of people. No code is a godsend, because you can do something custom at relatively low cost and complexity.
And Paul, I'm curious, have you had that experience, in your own business where something is, not tying up and you've had to integrate?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, I'm inherently, laziness is a good thing for software developers, because I've got 10 folks in my business, and I'm taking people on board quickly.
Yeah.
And when I take them on board, I need to create an email address, I need to create a Slack account, I need to create a time account for tracking their time. I need to create a user account in Bubble, in Xano, so there's a whole bunch of stuff I have to do that probably would take me 10, 15 minutes. So I've created an automation in Make that says, new employee, and it goes and creates all those accounts and sets them up and emails them the logins. And it's like, that's a simple little example of of what you can do with automation.
And that would change so many businesses, I feel. Even just that step, new employee, put them in, and then they've got all their logins.
Yeah, exactly. It's like those kinds of things of, I made a sale, update the CRM, send them a quote, reconcile the bank statement, see if the transactions come in. They have to be done manually. There's no reason to be doing that stuff manually. You can automate all of it.
Absolutely.
Paul, I'm interested, just hearing you talk, it seems like historically problems may not have been able to be solved with technology because the technology just wasn't there, or it's too expensive. But now it seems like the technology's there, it's no longer costly, and now it's almost problems aren't getting solved because businesses aren't aware that they can actually solve these problems. How much of your role is almost telling the market, hey, we can actually do this now? Are you educating a lot of people?
Am I an evangelist out there?
Just on your LinkedIn forums, just saying, we can do this. Doesn't have to be a problem anymore.
Guy's got a tattoo of Microsoft Access on his thigh.
Actually, that's a large part of what I seem to be doing at the moment. like particularly I have a focus on the construction industry, just because it's it's one of the largest industries in Australia. It's massively underinvested in tech, and typically the folks running those businesses are not tech savvy, right? They're incredibly capable in what they do, and there's so much opportunity to take a fairly let's say tech light industry like that, and to apply the right technology, the right process, and to make huge improvements in how they operate. So yeah, that's a large part of what I'm spending my time doing. I'm no longer, unfortunately, hands deep in Bubble and Xano and automations. I'm more trying to help people understand what's possible, and then if there's a fit, obviously love to help, but in some cases there's not a fit and they should do something else. And like you said, that's good as well, and that generally comes back to you somehow if you help people make the right decision.
What would you say to anyone who's listening right now who's wondering to themselves, should I be building an app? Maybe I should be doing low code, or maybe I should be going the full route, especially when thinking of these construction companies like you were talking about that are not adapting solutions or technology in any way, shape, or form. What kind of advice would you give them to help them make that leap?
Call me. I don't know what else to say. That's you need good advice, and wherever you can get that is great. Find someone that you trust, someone that you trusts, and get good advice, because there are with this sort of myriad of options that have come in many ways you can do things. It's more important than ever to make the right technology strategy, technology architecture, technology partner choice, because those things can hurt if you get them wrong.
Well, I personally want to thank you for coming on to the show. We have a favorite question we like to ask
sure.
people like yourself. This question is more directed towards, what type of technology have you used at some point in your life that has made your life personally better, that you would like to speak to the market about?
Oh, the Microsoft Access.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I probably have two answers for you. The one is automation and integration software like Zapier, like Make, I think is absolutely game changing. If anyone that has repetitive tasks that they're doing in their business, do yourself a favor and have a look at some of those tools, because they're really cheap. Make, for example, charges $10 per month for 10,000 operations.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
I did not think it was going to be that high.
Yeah. So I'm running multiple people's businesses off $10 worth of automation software.
Wow.
So it's kind of crazy almost how good it is.
Yeah.
So for people who are kind of wondering what you mean by that system, Zapier and similar solutions out there on the market, what they do is, if you had a piece of technology right now that maybe is performing checklists, you fill out a piece of paper and say, I did this, I did this, I did this. Maybe you want to take the information that you're collecting in that checklist and feed it into an internal database. Correct. This Zapier solution would essentially
send it out via email, put it in your CRM, add it to a Google Sheet, send out an SMS, put it in your QuickBooks accounting packet, anything you want to do. It's kind of your creativity is the only limit.
And what was the other one?
So that's the one, and honestly, I think the one that I couldn't live where I live, and I couldn't do what I do, and I wouldn't have the customers that I have is video meeting tools like Zoom is the big daddy of those probably. It's like it allows me to live on the Sunshine Coast, go to the beach with my kids and enjoy this great lifestyle, and have clients in Dubai, in Florida, Perth, in South Africa, and have a team, in the Philippines, in Vietnam, in Thailand, in Brazil, and kind of to orchestrate this virtual business that wouldn't be possible without those tools. So thank you, Zoom.
You just triggered half of our
I
audience who
love
was
that.
thinking,
Yeah.
Sorry.
why not Microsoft Teams?
Okay, Teams and Meetup, I love to.
I personally think they're two of the greatest solutions
Yeah.
I've ever used. I think we all came back, for anyone who's younger listening right now, like Skype was the OG, and everyone was like, oh my God, you can Skype call someone anywhere in the
That's where it
world.
all started, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it started.
Well, look, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure. It's been fun. Thank you.
Thank you
Absolute
so
yeah,
much.
banger of a conversation.
Thank you, Matt.
Loved it, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to The Tech Panel. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. A huge thank you to our major sponsor, SmoothLink Integrations. Stay connected and keep up with all the latest in tech.